Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're not just talking about privacy policies. You know, this pop-ups you just scroll past and blindly click agree on.
Right, the ones nobody actually reads.
Exactly. Today, we are looking at a tectonic shift in the digital landscape. We are talking about China, we are talking about data sovereignty, and we're unpacking a piece of legislation that effectively redraws the map of the internet.
It really is a line in the sand. I mean, for the last decade or so, the conversation has been totally dominated by Europe's GDPR.
Yeah, that was the gold standard.
It was. But now we have a new heavyweight contender that is arguably even stricter and, honestly, much more complex to navigate.
We are talking, of course, about the Personal Information Protection Law, or PIPL. And before we dive into the weeds, and believe me, the weeds are very dense today, I want to acknowledge that this entire deep dive is built on the research and analysis provided by WeCyberYou.
Which is, it's essential here. Because when you are dealing with Chinese law, translation isn't just about language, it's about the legal context.
Right.
The WeCyberYou source material does a really great job of stripping away the heavy legalese and getting straight to the operational reality.
So welcome to the WeCyberYou Unlocked podcast. If you find value in this breakdown as we go along, you should definitely follow the channel and visit WeCyberYou.com for more educational cybersecurity content like this.
That's a great resource.
It really is. But let's get right into the PIPL. I have to ask, why should you, as a listener, maybe you're a CISO in New York or a developer sitting in London, why should you care about a law that was passed in Beijing?
Because the days of the internet being this, lawless, borderless Wild West are completely over.
Yeah, those days are long gone.
The PIPL is China's first comprehensive data protection law, and it places China firmly on the map, alongside the EU, as having one of the strictest regimes in the world. But the real why you should care is the scope of it.
And this is where I think people get tripped up. There's this automatic assumption that if you don't have a physical office in Shanghai or you don't have Server X in Shenzhen, you are immune.
Oh, yeah. A lot of people think that.
But the WeCyberYou report makes it very clear that is a dangerous assumption.
It's a very expensive assumption to make. The PIPL has what we call extraterritorial reach.
Extraterritorial reach.
Yes. This is Article 3 of the law for those keeping score at home. It explicitly states that even if you are entirely outside of China, you are subject to this law if you are processing data of natural persons within China for specific purposes.
Okay, let's drill down on specific purposes then. We aren't just talking about accidental, passive data collection, right?
No, not at all. The law targets two main behaviors. First, if you are providing products or services to people in China.
So like a software company.
Exactly. Think about a SaaS platform hosted on AWS in Oregon, but you have enterprise clients in Beijing using your software. You have absolutely no physical office there, but you are providing a service. You are in the crosshairs.
So digital commerce is the main hook.
That's one of them. The second trigger is even more interesting, I think. It's analyzing or monitoring the behavior of natural persons within China.
Wow. That covers basically every modern analytics engine, marketing tracker, and user behavior tool on the market today.
It does. If you are scraping profiles, tracking cookies, or building behavioral models on users located in China, the PIPL applies to you.
That casts a massive net.
Huge. And here is the kicker that often gets missed. If you fall under this extraterritorial scope, you are legally required to establish a dedicated entity or appoint a representative within China to handle your compliance matters.
Wait, pause right there. That is a massive logistical hurdle.
Oh, it's a huge barrier.
You're saying a startup in Silicon Valley that fits this criteria effectively needs to hire a local rep in China just to be the point person for the government.
Yes, they do. They need someone physically on the ground who is liable for data protection matters. You cannot just manage this via email from California. It forces a physical footprint for a digital relationship.
That significantly raises the barrier to entry. It's not just make sure you comply with the rules. It's literally hire the staff in another country. Okay, so we've established that the net is incredibly wide. Now let's look at what is actually being caught in that net. How does the PIPL define the data itself?
It adopts a very broad definition. It's similar to GDPR, but with some distinct nuance. Personal information is defined as anything related to an identified or identifiable natural person.
Identifiable is always the tricky word in these laws.
It really is. Because it's not just a name or a government ID card number. It is the combination of data points that allows you to single someone out.
So the standard stuff first, email addresses, phone number.
Sure, those are obvious. But also IP addresses, device identifiers, your browsing history. If you can use the data to figure out who someone is, it's personal information.
Okay, that's standard privacy stuff so far. But the WeCyberYou report highlights a subcategory that seems to cause a lot more headaches for compliance teams, and that's sensitive personal information.
Yes. This is where the PIPL really bears its teeth. Sensitive personal information is defined as data that, if leaked or illegally used, could harm the dignity of persons or endanger personal safety or property.
That sounds a bit subjective, honestly. What does that actually look like when you're staring at a database?
The law does give us specific categories to work with. Biometrics is a really big one. Facial recognition data, fingerprints, voice prints.
Which is becoming the standard for authentication on almost every device now.
Right, we use it every day. Then you have religious beliefs, specific identity status, medical health records, financial accounts, and the location tracking of individuals.
Wait, location tracking? So if I am a logistics company and I'm tracking the GPS coordinates of my drivers to optimize my delivery routes, that's sensitive.
If it is their exact location, yes, that is absolutely sensitive personal information. And here is why that distinction matters so much. You cannot just bundle your consent for sensitive data into your general terms of service.
You can't just hide it in the fine print.
No, you need what they call separate consent.
Separate consent. That sounds like a user experience nightmare for app developers.
No. It can be a huge point of friction. It means you need a specific affirmative action from the user just for that specific category of data. You cannot bury it in paragraph 40 of a generic user agreement.
So if you want my location, you have to ask for it separately.
Yes. If you want their exact location, you have to ask for it explicitly. If you want their financial info, you have to ask for that explicitly too.
So instead of one I agree button at the very start when you open the app, the user might be hitting I agree 3 or 4 different times for different data types.
Essentially, yes. It interrupts the flow. And it gets stricter for data concerning minors, which the law defines as anyone under 14, that is automatically classified as sensitive.
But you need parental consent for that.
You need guardian consent, and specific rules apply to how you handle it.
That friction is going to kill conversion rates for a lot of consumer apps, but I get the intent. It forces the user to actually look at what they are giving up instead of just scrolling past.
That is the ultimate goal, yes.
Yeah.
Transparency.
Let's move over to the obligations then. Say I'm a chief information officer. I know my company is covered. I know we process sensitive data. What do I actually have to do to keep the regulators happy?
The PIPL operates on a few core principles. The biggest one you need to know is minimization, along with purpose limitation.
Meaning you can only take what you need.
Yes. You can only collect data that is strictly necessary for a clear, reasonable purpose.
So the classic Silicon Valley strategy of collect everything now and figure out how to monetize it later is dead.
Completely dead under this law. If you are an insurance company, you can collect health data to process a medical claim. That's fine.
Makes sense.
But you cannot collect that same health data to train a marketing algorithm for your third-party partners. Not unless you go back and get specific, separate consent for that brand new purpose.
Wow. That basically kills the secondary market for data, or at least makes it incredibly difficult to operate.
It really does. And you also have heavy obligations around transparency. You have to clearly tell people what you are doing and security.
So encrypting the databases, that sort of thing.
Yes. You have to implement technical measures like encryption, tight access controls, and audits. It's not enough to just put out a PR statement saying you value privacy. Your actual system architecture has to prove it.
Now let's flip the table for a second. If I am the user, the learner in this scenario, what power do I actually have? Because usually I feel pretty powerless against big tech companies.
The PIPL actually gives individuals a very strong toolkit. You have the right to access and copy your data. You have the right to correct it if the company got it wrong.
Yeah.
And you have the right to request deletion.
That's the right to be forgotten, right? We've seen that in Europe.
Yes, very similar concept. But the one right that really shakes up a company's technical architecture is the right to withdraw consent.
How does that play out differently here?
It means that if I agree to let you process my data today, I can completely revoke that permission tomorrow. And you, as the company, must have a mechanism in place to stop processing my data immediately.
Immediately?
Yes.
Yeah.
And you can't make it a labyrinth. The law states it has to be as easy to withdraw your consent as it was to give it in the first place.
That is a massive, heavy lift for engineering teams. It means your entire data pipeline needs a functional kill switch for every single individual user record. You can't just have a static database anymore. It has to be entirely dynamic.
Correct. It requires a lot of back-end engineering. And you also have rights regarding algorithms. You have the right to ask for an explanation of automated decision-making.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. If an algorithm rejects your loan application or automatically sets your insurance premium higher, you have the right to ask, why did the machine decide this?
Yeah.
And in some cases, you can say, no, I want a human to review this decision.
That transparency on algorithms is going to be a massive battleground, especially with the explosion of AI tools recently.
Absolutely.
But I want to pivot to what I think is the most complex part of this entire deep dive. The WeCyberYou report calls it the Great Wall of Data. We are talking about cross-border transfers.
This is where the rubber really meets the road for international business. This is the data sovereignty piece. The default assumption of the PIPL is that data generated in China should stay in China.
But the modern internet is built on data flowing freely across borders. I mean, if I'm a multinational corporation, my HR system might be hosted in Germany, my sales database is sitting in the US, and my manufacturing plant is in China. That data has to move for the business to function.
And it still can move, but you are going to have to jump through some flaming hoops to do it. You cannot just transfer personal information out of China freely anymore. The law provides 3 main pathways, and you must qualify for at least one of them.
Let's break those pathways down, because this sounds like where the entire compliance budget gets spent.
It is. The first and most rigorous pathway is a mandatory security assessment organized by the Cyberspace Administration of China, or the CICAC.
So a full government audit of your data practices.
Basically, yes. This is required for critical information infrastructure operators, so think energy sectors, transport, finance. Or it's required for anyone processing a massive volume of data.
What's considered massive?
The threshold is usually triggered if you process data on more than 1 million individuals.
Wait, 1 million users? That's really not a high bar for a successful consumer app. If you have a decent-sized mobile game or an e-commerce platform, you hit 1 million users very easily.
You do, and if you hit that number, you must pass this government assessment before you can send a single byte of data overseas. It creates a huge bottleneck.
Okay, what if I'm smaller? Say I'm a B2B software company. I only have a few thousand enterprise clients. I don't have 1 million users.
Then you might look at the second pathway, which is getting a certification by a professional body recognized by the CAC. Or you look at the third and most common pathway for standard businesses, which is signing a contract using the standard contractual clauses issued by the CAC.
Standard contractual clauses, or SCCs, we use those in Europe too. It's basically a legal promise that the data will be kept safe when it leaves the origin country.
Yes, but the Chinese SCCs are slightly different. You actually have to file them with the government. It's not just a private, quiet agreement between 2 companies. There is an official filing requirement. But here is the part that trips everyone up, regardless of which of those 3 pathways you use.
I feel like there is always a but in these regulations.
There is. Even if you pass the intensive government assessment or you sign and file the standard contract, you still need to obtain separate, informed consent from the individual data subject.
Wait, really? So I get the official government stamp of approval, I sign the binding legal contract, and I still have to go back and ask the user, hey, is it okay if I send your email address to my server in New York?
Yes. You have to inform them of the overseas recipient's name, their contact info, the exact processing purpose, and how the user can exercise their rights against that foreign entity. And then they have to actively say yes.
That is a double lock. The state regulates the overall security, and the individual regulates the specific permission. That makes cross-border data flows incredibly fragile. One no from a user breaks the entire chain for their data.
It does. And this is exactly why many multinational companies are effectively choosing to just localize.
Just keeping it all there.
Yeah. They are building separate data centers physically inside China to completely avoid the hassle of transferring the data out. It's often cheaper and safer to just build new local infrastructure than to manage the massive compliance headache of moving the data across the border.
Which naturally leads to the fragmentation of the internet. But before we get too philosophical about that, let's talk about the consequences. If I decide to risk it, say my company tries to just fly under the radar, what happens?
You get crushed. The enforcement mechanisms written into the PIPL are designed to be terrifying.
We're not talking about a little slap on the wrist here.
No. The fines can go up to 50 million RMB, which is very significant on its own. But the real headline number is 5% of the company's annual revenue for the previous year.
Wait, 5% of total revenue, not profit.
Correct, revenue. For a big multinational tech company, that could literally be billions of dollars. That is actually higher than the GDPR's maximum fine, which is capped at 4%.
Yeah.
So PIPL sets a brand new global ceiling for privacy penalties.
That is definitely enough to get the immediate attention of the board of directors.
It is. But money is something massive companies can sometimes just budget for as the cost of doing business. What they cannot budget for is a business suspension.
They can shut you down.
Yes. The authorities can order you to stop operations, they can suspend your apps from the app stores, or they can entirely revoke your business licenses in the country. That is a death sentence for your market presence in China.
And there is a personal angle to all this too, right? Because the WeCyberYou source mentioned this isn't just corporate liability.
This is the part that makes executives really sweat. Under the PIPL, the person directly responsible can be held personally liable.
Personally liable.
Yes. We are talking about fines up to 1 million RMB taken directly out of your own personal pocket.
Ouch.
And it gets worse. You can be legally banned from serving as a director, a supervisor, or a senior manager of any company for a certain period of time.
So it's a literal career ender. If you are the CISO or the data protection officer and you mess this compliance up, you aren't just fired, you are legally barred from holding a leadership role again.
It changes the dynamic in the boardroom completely. When the security team goes to the executives and asks for a huge budget to implement these privacy controls, they aren't just protecting the company's bottom line anymore. They are protecting the CEO's personal bank account and career.
It aligns the incentives pretty ruthlessly, I have to say. So, bringing this all together, we have a law with massive global reach, incredibly strict definitions of data, very difficult rules for crossing borders, and massive career-ending penalties. What is the big takeaway here?
The big takeaway is that we are witnessing the absolute solidification of data sovereignty. For a long time, tech companies operated on the philosophy of move fast and break things. The PIPL essentially says, you can move fast, but you will absolutely not break our rules.
It really feels like we are moving away from a single, globally connected internet and moving toward a splinternet, where digital borders are just as hard and real as physical borders.
That is the new reality. If you are a global business, you don't really have one unified IT stack anymore. You have your China stack, your Europe stack, your US stack. The baseline cost of doing business digitally has gone way up, and the complexity of managing global data has just skyrocketed.
It fundamentally changes how we have to think about the web. It's not this big floating global cloud anymore. It's becoming a series of highly regulated walled gardens.
And those walls are getting higher every single year. The PPL is really a blueprint that other nations are watching very, very closely right now.
That is a very sobering thought to end on. You have to wonder, how does this change the future of global business? The era of the completely open internet might truly be behind us, replaced by the era of the regulated bordered internet.
Indeed, it's a whole new world.
We have covered so much ground today, from extraterritoriality all the way to the personal liability of executives. I want to thank WeCyberYou again for the incredible source material that made this deep dive possible.
It is a really complex topic, but it's absolutely vital to understand if you operate in this space.
If you want to stay ahead of these regulatory changes and, not get caught on the wrong side of a 5% revenue fine, you need to stay educated. This has been the WeCyberYou Unlocked podcast. Please follow the channel and do yourself a huge favor. Visit WeCyberYou.com for more educational cybersecurity content like this.
Because knowledge is your absolute best defense.
It truly is. Thanks for listening, and we will see you in the next deep dive.